Chapter 8. The Liar. Labhu, the old Shakari of my village, was a born liar. Therefore, he had won the reputation of being the best storyteller in our parts. And though a sweeper of low caste, he was honored by all and sundry. He was tolerated even to the extent of being given a seat at the foot of the banyan tree. And my mother did not insist too harshly on the necessity of my taking a bath to purify myself every time I had been seen listening to one of his uncanny tales with the other village boys. Labhu was a thin little man, with the glint of a lance and the glide of an arrow. His wiry, weather-beaten frame must have had immense reserves of energy, to judge by the way he could chase stags up the steep crags of the hills behind our village and run abreast of the bay mare of Subedar Deep Singh, to whose household he was attached as Shakari, except when some English official, a rich white merchant, or a guest of the Subedar, engaged him for a season. It was perhaps this wonderful physical agility of his that had persuaded him to adopt the profession of a Shakari. Labhu also had a sensitive, dark face of which the lower lip trembled as it pronounced the first accents of a poignant verse or the last words of gruesome hunting story. And it was the strange spell that his tragic verses and weird stories cast on me that made me his devoted follower throughout my childhood. He taught me to run with the hare and hunt with the hounds. He taught me the way to track all the wild animals. And he taught me how to concoct a cock and bull story to tell to my father if I had to make an excuse for not being at home during the reign of the hot sun. His teaching was, of course, an example, as I was rather a critical pupil. Labhu, I would say, I am sure it is impossible to track any prey when you are half up the side of hillock. Achha, he would say, I will show you. Stand still and listen. I did so, and we both heard a pebble drop. Up he darted on the stony ridge in the direction whence the sound had come, jumping from crag, securing a precarious foothold on a small stone here and a sure one on a boulder there, till he was tearing through a flock of sheep, towards a little gully where a ram had taken shelter in a cave, secure in the belief that it would escape its pursuer. All right, I would say. You may have been able to track this ram, but I don't believe that yarn of yours about the devil ram you saw when you were hunting with the Subedar. I swear by God Almighty, he said, it is true. The Subedar will tell you that he saw this terrible apparition with me. It was a beast about the size of an elephant, with eyes as big as a hen's eggs and a beard as long as that of Maulvi Shahdin, the priest of the mosque, only not henna dyed and red, but blue-black. It had huge ears as big as an elephant's, which did not flap, however, but pricked up like the ears of the Subedar's horse. It had a nose like that of the wife of the missionary Sahib, and it had square jaws which showed teeth almost as big as the chunks of marble which lie outside the temple, as it laughed at the Subedar. It appeared unexpectedly near the peak of Devi Parbat. The Subedar and I had ascended about 12,000 feet up the mountain in search of game, when suddenly, out of the spirit world that always waits about us in the living air, there was the clattering of stones and boulders, the whistling of sharp winds, the gurgling of thunder, and a huge crack on the side of the mountain. Then an enormous figure seemed to rise. From a distance it seemed to both of us like a dark patch, and we thought it was an oriole and began to stalk towards it. What was our surprise, however, when, as soon as we saw it stand there, facing us with its glistening, white eyes as big as a hen's eggs, it sneezed and ripped the mountain side with a kick of its forefeet and disappeared. The mountain shook and the Subedar trembled, while I stood bravely where I was and laughed till I wept with joy at my good luck in having seen so marvelous a manifestation of the devil god of the tribe of rams. I tell you, son, please God, I shall show him to you one of these days. Compared to the other vision that was vouchsafed to me, praise be to God, when I was on the journey to Ladakh, hunting with Jolly John Sahib. And then began to relate a fantastic story of a colossal snake, which was so improbable that even I did not believe it. Oh, you are a fool, Labhu, I said. And you are a liar. Everybody says so. And I don't believe you at all. My mother says I am silly to believe your tales. Alright then, if you don't believe my stories, why do you come here to listen to them? He said with wounded pride. Go, I shall never teach you anything more, and I shall certainly not let you accompany me to the hunts. Alright, I said, chagrined and stubborn. I don't want to speak to you either. And I ran home bursting with indignation at having forced a quarrel upon Labhu, when really he only told me his stories for my amusement. Labhu went away for a while on a hunting tour with the Subedar. He didn't come back to the village when this hunting tour had finished, because Subedar Deep Singh's eldest son, Kuldeep Singh, who was a lieutenant in the army, took him for a trip across the Himalayas to Nepal. During this time, though I regretted Labhu's absence, I lent my ear readily to the malicious misrepresentation of his character that the Subedar and his employers, and occasionally also my father, indulged in, because, though superior to Labhu by caste, they were not such good shots as he was. He can only wait by a forest pool or safe footpath to shoot at some unfortunate beast. This Labhu, said the Subedar. And often he shoots in the dark with that inefficient powder gun of his. He is no good except for tracking. Yes, said my father, he is a vain boaster and a liar. The only beast he dared to shoot at while he was with me was a hare, and even that he hit in the leg. I waited eagerly for Labhu's return to confirm from his very mouth these stories of his incompetence, because, though incredulous of this scandal, I had been driven to a frenzy of chagrin by this insulting dismissal of me. I thought I would ask him point blank whether he was really as bad a hunter as the Subedar and my father made him out to be. When Labhu came back, however, he limped about and seemed ill. I was very sad to see him broken and dispirited. And I forgot all the scandal I had heard about him in my bafflement at the sudden change that had come into his character, for he was now no longer the garrulous man who sat telling stories to old men and young boys, but a strangely reticent creature who lay in a stupor all day, moaning and murmuring to himself in a prolonged delirium, except that he occasionally hobbled out with a huge staff in his hand in the evenings. I was afraid to go near him, because he always wore a forbidding, angry look. But the villagers didn't seem to think there was anything to matter with Labhu, as I heard them say, now that we have no patience with him and his stories, he spends most of his time telling them to himself, the fool. I owed a loyalty to Labhu, for I had discovered a kinship in my makeup for all those extravagances for which the Shakari was so well known. So I went up to him one day, as he lay on a broken string bed near his mud hut, under the precarious shelter which a young people gave him. You have returned then, Master Labhu, I said. Yes, he said, I have been back some time, son. I looked for you, but you did not seem to be about. But you know, The man who is slain cannot walk even to his own house. This leg of mine pains me and I can't get about as I used to. What happened to your leg, then? I asked, realizing that he had forgotten all about our past quarrels and was as kind and communicative to me as before. Did you fall down a cliff or something? No, he said in a tired voice. And then kept quiet for a long while. What happened, then? I persisted. You know, son, Labu began, at first pale and hesitant. Then smiling and lifting his eyebrows in the familiar manner of the old days, I went away on a hunting tour in the party of the Subedar's eldest son, Kuldeep Singh and some of his friends. Well, we went to Nepal through the Kulu Valley. They had no experience of hunting in this or in any other part of the world, and I led them across such trails as I knew and such as the local shakaris told me about. That boy, Kuldeep, I don't know what he does in the army, but he can't shoot at any range, and the sahibs with him were clumsy, purblind white men. I would point to a beast with my stick, and, though they could see the hide before their eyes, they bungled with their guns or were too noisy on their feet, and away crashed the bull which we had been tracking. I would grunt, shrug my shoulders and did not mind, because they were like children. They had finished hundreds of cartridges and had not shot anything, and daily begged me to help them secure some game. At first I told them that game doesn't taste sweet unless it is shot by oneself. But at length I took pity on them and thought that I would secure them a good mixed bag. I shot 12 tigers with my gun and 15 panthers in the course of 7 days, and many stags. On the 8th day we saw a monster which had the body of a bear, the head of a reindeer, the feet of a goat, the tail of a wild bull and a glistening, fibrous tissue all round it like the white silken veil which the Rani of Bundi wore when she came to visit Subedar Deep Singh's wife. Kuldeep Singh and the Sahibs were very frightened of this apparition and said it was the devil himself who had the shape of an earthly being and who would soon breathe a breath which would mix with the still air of the night and poison life. They were all for killing it outright, while I was sure that it was only a princess of the royal house of Nepal who had been transformed by some magician into this fantastic shape and size. And I wanted to catch it alive and bring it home to be my bride. Labu went on to relate how beautiful she was and how he resolved to restore her to her normal self by reading magical incantations. I told her I loved her, he continued, and she smiled shyly. But some fool, I think it was the Subedar's son, fired a volley of shots, which frightened her so much that she ran, became one with the air and began to ascend the snowy peaks of Kailash Parbat. I was bent on rescuing my beloved, and I leapt from one mountain to another, calling after her to stop. But that idiot Kuldeep and the Sahibs kept on shooting and roused the magician who kept guard over her. And this evil sage threw a huge mountain of snow at me to kill me. I just blew a hot breath and the mountain of snow cracked into a million pieces and hung about the sky like glittering stars. Then the magician struck the earth with his feet and opened up a grave to bury me alive. I leapt right across the fissure and found myself on a peak in the land of the Lama who never dies. By now, of course, the magician had hidden the beauty away in some cave. So I gave up the chase, as there was the doom of death about this beauty, anyhow, and I made one leap across the Himalayas for home. And as you landed this side of the mountains you sprained your foot, I said. Labu lifted his eyebrows funnily in the manner of the old days and laughing said, Have I told you this story before, then? Mulk Raj Anand. Glossary. All and sundry, everyone. Glint of a lance. Shine as javelin. Glide of an arrow. Walk straight. Apparition. Ghost. Game. Hunt. Hear. Chagrined. Annoyed. Reticent. Reserved. Delirium. Whispering.